The truck's engine sputtered once, twice, and then went completely silent. In the heart of Alaska's wild bear country, miles from help, Mike Stevens realized he was stranded. The sun was slipping behind the snow-capped mountains, the temperature dropping fast. Gripping the steering wheel, Mike glanced at his satellite phone. Dead. No signal, no lifeline. A cold dread crept over him, but he tried to stay calm. He had survived dangerous situations before. He just needed to think. But then he saw it. Through the frost-covered windshield, a massive shadow moved. At first, it seemed like a trick of the light. But then the figure stepped closer, its breath visible in the freezing air. A grizzly bear. Mike had seen plenty of bears in his 20 years as a wildlife photographer. But something about this one was different. It wasn't foraging or wandering. It was staring directly at him. Then out of the shadows, more shapes began to emerge. 1, 2, 5. He lost count. Bears were coming from every direction, their massive forms silent and deliberate. His pulse raced as the realization hit him. He wasn't just stranded, he was surrounded. And these bears weren't acting like wild animals. They were too quiet, too organized. As the last rays of sunlight vanished and the cold crept in, Mike understood one terrifying truth. Whatever was happening here was unlike anything he had ever seen before. The silence pressed in around him, heavy and unnatural. Not a single bird called, and the forest seemed frozen in time. Mike's hands trembled as he reached for his thermal imaging camera, his lifeline to understanding what was happening. Through the lens, the truth became clear. Heat signatures glowed bright against the cold backdrop. Massive forms moving from all directions. They were bears, unmistakable in their size and shape, but their behavior wasn't normal. 3 emerged from the northern tree line, their thick fur blending into the shadows. Another group appeared from the east. These weren't random movements. The bears were spreading out, taking positions like chess pieces on a board. Mike zoomed in, his photographer's instincts overtaking his fear. That's when he noticed something chilling. The bears were communicating. Subtle head movements, small shifts in posture. They were signaling each other. It was coordinated, deliberate, and completely unlike anything he had seen in his decades of wildlife photography. His gaze shifted to the largest bear, the leader. It stepped into the open, illuminated by the truck's headlights. Nearly 9 feet tall, it rose on its hind legs, its breath visible in the freezing air. Its eyes glowed, locked on Mike with an intensity that made his heart race. Mike tried to tell himself this was just his imagination, but deep down, he knew better. These bears weren't acting out of instinct. They were planning something, and Mike, stuck in his lifeless truck, was at the center of it all. The cold crept into the truck as Mike wiped frost from the windshield, trying to keep the bears in sight. His breath fogged up the glass faster than he could clear it. He counted at least 10 of them now, their massive shapes moving through the shadows with eerie purpose. Step by step, the bears spread out, forming a wide circle around the truck. Mike's headlights illuminated their thick fur and broad shoulders, but beyond the beams, the forest was pitch black. The bears' movements were unnervingly precise, each one maintaining equal distance from the others. Mike couldn't stop himself from lifting his camera. Through the zoom lens, he caught details that made his blood run cold. These bears weren't wandering aimlessly. They were watching each other, responding to subtle signals. A tilt of the head here, a shift of the shoulders there. Every move seemed coordinated, deliberate, and intelligent. The lead bear, towering over the others, let out a low rumble. The sound sent a shiver through Mike, and the other bears stopped in unison. The circle tightened. They were closer now. Too close. Desperation clawed at him. He turned the key again, praying for the engine to catch. Nothing. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the slow crunch of paws on frozen ground. In a last-ditch effort, Mike slammed his hand on the horn. The sound blared, echoing through the clearing, but the bears didn't flinch. Instead, they pressed closer, their formation growing tighter. Mike's mind raced. What did they want? Why were they acting like this? He had spent years observing grizzlies in the wild, and nothing in his experience came close to explaining this behavior. The frost on the windows thickened as the temperature dropped even further. Mike's hands trembled as he reached for his night vision scope. Peering through it, he saw even more bears emerging from the trees, their heat signatures glowing like embers in the dark. They were everywhere, moving slowly, deliberately, and always in sync. His truck was now the center of their circle, and it was shrinking by the minute. Mike wiped the frost again and stared into the glowing eyes of the lead bear. Its gaze was steady, almost calculating. Whatever was happening, it wasn't random. These bears were following a plan. The cold air inside the truck felt suffocating as the situation outside grew even stranger. Through his night vision scope, Mike could see the bears moving with unsettling precision. Every step, every pause, every glance seemed deliberate. They weren't acting like animals driven by instinct. They were behaving like a unit with a shared purpose. The lead bear stood motionless in front of the truck, its massive body illuminated by the headlights. It raised its head and let out a low rumbling sound. The noise wasn't a growl or roar. It was something else entirely, a sound that felt almost intentional. And then the others responded. One by one, they made similar noises, creating a strange, haunting pattern. Mike had never heard anything like it before. It wasn't random. It sounded coordinated. He couldn't look away. His fear was still there, gnawing at the edges of his mind. But something else was taking over now. Awe. He adjusted his camera, capturing every movement, every sound. These were grizzlies, one of the most dangerous predators on Earth. Yet their behavior defied everything he thought he knew about them. The circle tightened again. Mike could now see the frost on their fur, the scars on their faces, the rippling strength in their muscles. But what truly terrified him wasn't their size or power. It was their patience. These bears weren't rushing toward him or clawing at the truck. They were waiting, as if they knew exactly what they were doing. Suddenly, through the night vision scope, Mike noticed something unusual. The bears weren't just moving, they were scanning. Some would glance over their shoulders, all in the same direction, before returning their focus to the truck. It was as if they were guarding against something. But what? His heart raced as he tried to piece together what was happening. He had seen bears fight for territory, forage for food, even show curiosity toward humans. But he had never seen them act like this, with intelligence, coordination, and purpose. The lead bear tilted its head slightly, and the others immediately adjusted their positions. The circle was now impossibly tight, and Mike felt like a trapped animal. His hands gripped the steering wheel, even though the truck couldn't save him. Then a faint smell hit his nose. Smoke. It was subtle at first, just a trace on the cold wind, but it grew stronger with each passing second. Mike's pulse quickened as realization dawned. The bears weren't acting like predators. They were reacting to something else, something he couldn't yet see. And then, in the distance, he spotted it, a faint orange glow flickering through the trees. The smell of smoke grew thicker. His stomach dropped. A wildfire. The lead bear turned its head sharply, staring toward the glow. And in that moment, Mike finally understood. These bears weren't here to hunt him. They were here to save him. The faint orange glow on the horizon grew brighter, flickering like a warning light. The smell of smoke was unmistakable now, carried on the cold wind. Mike felt his throat tighten as he wiped the frost off the windshield again. His breath came in shallow gasps. The bears were no longer watching him. Their heads were turning toward the western horizon, ears perked up, muscles tense. Even the lead bear, so still before, began to shift its weight. Whatever was coming was closer than Mike had thought. The glow intensified, lighting up the treetops in eerie shades of orange and red. The first crack echoed through the forest, a sound like a giant tree splitting in half. Mike's chest tightened as the realization hit him in full force. It wasn't just a wildfire, it was a firestorm. Through his thermal scope, he saw the bears repositioning. The leader let out another deep rumble, and the others responded immediately, spreading out slightly. It was as if they were creating a protective barrier, not for themselves, but for the truck. Mike's instincts screamed at him to move, to do something, but the truck wouldn't start. He watched helplessly as the lead bear turned to face him, its eyes locked onto his, steady and calm. And then, it did something Mike would never forget. The bear lowered its head, then raised it sharply, pointing its snout toward the eastern tree line. The motion was deliberate, almost human. Mike's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't a random gesture. It was a direction. The bears began shifting again, moving with an urgency that was impossible to ignore. The lead bear tapped its massive paw against the ground, a sound that sent vibrations through the truck. The firestorm roared in the distance, a sound so loud it drowned out even the pounding of Mike's heart. Sparks filled the air, glowing embers swirling in the wind like tiny fireflies. The lead bear stood firm, its massive frame silhouetted against the flickering orange light. It motioned again, pointing its snout toward the gap in the trees. The message was unmistakable now. Move. Mike's hands trembled as he tried the ignition one last time. Miraculously, the truck sputtered, coughed, and roared to life. Relief surged through him, but there was no time to celebrate. The bears didn't hesitate. As the truck's engine rumbled, they began moving in perfect formation, their massive bodies clearing the way ahead. Mike flicked on the headlights and gripped the steering wheel tightly. The flames were closing in, their heat pressing against the truck like an invisible force. He eased the vehicle forward, following the lead bear's steady movements. The corridor the bears had created was narrow, but it was enough. Each step the bears took seemed calculated. Some moved forward, while others hung back to ensure the path stayed clear. The ground was treacherous, fallen branches, uneven terrain, but the bears seemed to anticipate every obstacle. Mike watched in awe as two of the larger bears worked together to push a fallen log out of the way, their powerful muscles rippling in the firelight. As the truck moved deeper into the forest, other animals began to appear. A pair of deer darted through the gap, their sleek bodies barely visible in the smoke. Foxes followed, their bushy tails trailing behind them. Even a pack of wolves loped alongside the truck, their usual fear of humans completely forgotten in the face of the greater danger. Mike could hardly believe what he was seeing. Prey and predators, side by side, fleeing the flames together. The bears maintained their positions, guiding not just him, but every creature in the forest toward safety. The firestorm surged closer, its heat growing unbearable. The dashboard thermometer in Mike's truck climbed higher and higher, the warning light blinking red. Sweat dripped down his face despite the freezing air outside. He tightened his grip on the wheel, his knuckles white. The lead bear paused, lifting its head to sniff the air. Without hesitation, it veered slightly to the left, leading the group toward a natural fire break. The other bears followed immediately, their movements smooth and synchronized. Mike turned the truck to match their path, trusting them completely. Flames licked at the edges of the corridor, but the bears didn't falter. When burning branches crashed to the ground, they responded instantly. Some positioned themselves as shields, their thick fur singed but unbroken, while others worked to clear the debris. Their coordination was flawless, as if they had rehearsed this escape 1,000 times. Through the smoke, Mike could see more animals joining the procession. A moose and her calf stumbled through the trees, their long legs carrying them quickly over the rough terrain. Birds swooped low, their wings barely visible against the swirling embers. The forest was alive with movement, a desperate exodus led by the bears. Mike glanced in his rearview mirror. The sight took his breath away. Behind his truck stretched a river of wildlife, all following the path the bears had carved. Elk bounded alongside the wolves, while smaller animals scurried between their legs. It was a scene unlike anything Mike had ever imagined. The lead bear turned its massive head and looked directly at Mike through the windshield. In its eyes, Mike saw something he couldn't explain. Intelligence, determination, and something else. Purpose. These bears weren't just leading him to safety. They were leading an entire ecosystem out of the fire's path, acting as guardians of the forest in its hour of greatest need. Through the smoke-filled night, a glimmer of hope appeared in the distance. At first, Mike thought it was another part of the fire, but then the light sharpened into two distinct beams. It was the floodlights of the ranger station, cutting through the darkness like a beacon. Relief flooded him, but the bears pressed on, their movements growing more urgent. The lead bear let out a low, rumbling call, and the others responded instantly. They adjusted their positions, creating an even tighter formation around the truck. Their enormous bodies shielded the vehicle from flying embers and falling debris as the firestorm roared just behind them. Mike gripped the steering wheel, guiding the truck along the path they had cleared. His headlights caught glimpses of animals still fleeing through the corridor. Deer, foxes, even wolves. The natural order had vanished. Prey and predator moved together, united in their desperate escape. When the truck finally reached the ranger station's grounds, Mike could barely believe he had made it. He slammed on the brakes, his hands trembling as the engine sputtered and died again. But the bears didn't stop. They held their positions, standing guard as the last of the animals poured into the safety of the open clearing. Rangers emerged from the station, their flashlights slicing through the smoky air. They froze when they saw the scene before them. 15 massive grizzlies, surrounding the truck like sentinels. Their fur singed and smoking, but their movements calm and deliberate. Mike stumbled out of the truck, his camera still clutched tightly in his hands. He could barely speak, his mind reeling from what he had just witnessed. The lead bear turned to face him one last time. Its eyes met his through the smoky haze, and in that moment, Mike felt a connection he couldn't explain. There was intelligence in those eyes, a depth that went beyond instinct. The lead bear let out a soft grunt, and the others began to move. Slowly they started retreating into the forest, their massive forms disappearing into the shadows. But they didn't leave completely. They lingered at the edge of the clearing, watching as the animals they had guided to safety regrouped under the ranger station's floodlights. The lead bear turned back one final time, its scarred fur glowing faintly in the firelight. It lowered its head, almost as if in acknowledgement, before vanishing into the remnants of the forest. Mike stood frozen, overwhelmed by what he had just experienced. These bears hadn't just saved his life. They had saved the forest creatures, acting with a wisdom and compassion that defied everything science thought it knew about the natural world. In the days that followed, Mike's mind replayed the events of that night over and over. He sat in the ranger station, reviewing the photos and videos he had captured. Each frame told a story that would challenge everything humanity thought it knew about wildlife. The images were breathtaking. 15 grizzlies working together with military precision, clearing paths, protecting vulnerable creatures, and guiding an entire ecosystem to safety. Scientists who later studied the footage were left speechless. The bear's behavior wasn't just advanced, it was unprecedented. The lead bear stood out in every frame. Its scarred fur, its deliberate movements, and its calm, intelligent gaze became symbols of something extraordinary. Mike couldn't forget the way it had looked at him, as if it knew exactly what it was doing. News of the event spread quickly. Mike's footage went viral, capturing the world's attention. Major news networks shared his story, while experts from around the globe debated the implications. The bears had demonstrated not only intelligence, but also an undeniable sense of purpose and compassion. The wildfire left much of the forest in ashes, but the creatures it displaced survived thanks to the bears. Even after the flames died down, the grizzlies stayed in the area. Researchers observed them continuing to work together, guiding animals to new feeding grounds and protecting territories they would normally defend fiercely. For Mike, the experience was life-changing. As he stared at the final photograph he had taken, the lead bear silhouetted against the burning forest, its eyes glowing with a quiet determination. He felt a deep sense of humility. These creatures had risked their lives not just for their own survival, but for the survival of others, including a human who had stumbled into their world. The event sparked a global conversation. Conservation laws were passed to protect the bears and their habitat. Scientists began re-examining everything they thought they knew about animal intelligence, social behavior, and the interconnectedness of ecosystems. But for Mike, it wasn't just about science. It was about a moment that revealed the true depth of nature's wisdom and grace. These bears had shown him and the world that even in the face of destruction, there is room for compassion, cooperation, and hope. The memory of that night would stay with Mike forever. And as the forest began its slow recovery, he knew one thing for certain. He had witnessed something that would change the way humanity saw the natural world forever. Mike's story isn't just about survival. It's about the unexpected connection between humans and nature, and the incredible intelligence and compassion that wildlife can show. What happened that night in Alaska wasn't just an escape from a wildfire. It was a glimpse into a world we're only beginning to understand. If this story moved you, imagine what else we've yet to discover about the natural world. Share this incredible tale with others and help spread awareness about the importance of protecting our planet's wildlife. And this is just the beginning. There are countless stories out there, some heartwarming, some breathtaking, and some that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Subscribe to our channel, Nature's Untold Stories, for more extraordinary encounters that showcase the beauty, resilience, and mystery of the wild. Don't miss out. Join us on this journey, and let's explore the wonders of nature together.